You're here? Maggie's voice sliced through the hum of conversation like a razor, her smile frozen, but eyes radiating disdain. Every muscle in my body tightened, pulse thudding in my ears. It was the same look I'd spent my life dreading, one that screamed I didn't belong no matter how hard I tried. And I'd tried harder than she could ever imagine. My name is Natalie, and Maggie is my older sister. She's always been the star, the golden child, glowing so brightly, no one else ever seemed to matter. Especially me. But tonight was different. Tonight, my presence here, at her extravagant party, was more than just uncomfortable. It was dangerous. Because tonight, hidden deep in my pocket, was a message confirming a deal that would shake Maggie's perfect, glittering world to its foundation. I was no longer the quiet, overlooked sibling she could mock at dinner tables and dismiss in front of her friends. Without her even suspecting, I'd built something remarkable, a company that now rivaled hers. Soon, she and my parents would know exactly who I'd become. As I stood there, heart racing, watching Maggie glide effortlessly around her adoring guests, resentment simmered inside me, hotter and sharper than I'd ever allowed myself to feel. Years of being treated like a background decoration had led to this moment, but it wasn't just about revenge. Although I won't lie, revenge was sweet. It was about finally stepping out from her shadow, about claiming respect I'd earned, respect they had denied me for too long. My fingers brushed the edge of my phone, gripping the message tightly. I took a shaky breath, bracing for the confrontation ahead, because tonight wasn't just about changing my own story. It was about rewriting theirs. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever overcome something for your family. Trust me, you have no idea what they'll do once they find out the truth. It's strange how invisibility works. You'd think after years of being overlooked, I'd have grown immune to the pain. But every dismissal still stung, fresh as the first. My whole childhood, my parents saw right through me. Every achievement I fought for, every small victory, simply evaporated in Maggie's shadow. I remember, vividly, one high school awards night. The auditorium was packed, buzzing with pride and expectation. Maggie had graduated 2 years earlier, leaving behind a legacy that teachers still whispered about. I'd won first place in a state science competition, something I'd spent months preparing for, nights hunched over glowing screens, while my family dismissed my passion as just a hobby. The announcer called my name. I walked forward, heart hammering, gripping that trophy like a lifeline. But when I looked out at the crowd, my family's seats were empty. They'd slipped out after the first half, assuming there was nothing left worth seeing. That empty row etched itself into my memory forever. Afterward, trophy in hand, I met them by the car. Mom's eyes briefly flicked down at the golden figurine, then back up, unbothered. "Oh, was your part tonight too? Sorry, honey, we figured all the important stuff had ended." I said nothing. My silence had become another trophy, one of quiet resilience, or maybe quiet resentment. It was hard to tell the difference. College was more of the same. Maggie was already blazing trails, landing internships at prestigious companies, hosting dinners that my parents proudly attended. Meanwhile, I quietly juggled classes, part-time jobs, and a growing passion for coding late into the night. Every milestone went unnoticed. Dean's List, graduating early, internships at startups no one had ever heard of because they didn't fit the glamorous narrative my parents preferred. Then there was the day my company made its first $1 million revenue. Alone in my tiny apartment, I stared at the figures on my laptop screen, disbelief turning into a quiet pride. I dialed my mom's number, heart hopeful, wanting desperately to share this win. The response was crushingly familiar. "That's lovely, Natalie, but Maggie just landed a major account. She's all over the news again." My successes never counted because they never looked like Maggie's. She stood in spotlights. I lived behind screens. She thrived on praise. I survived on determination. Every ignored achievement chipped away at something deep inside me, leaving scars hidden beneath carefully maintained composure. Over the years, I accepted that my family would never appreciate the quiet strength I'd built. That realization hurt, but it fueled a deeper resolve. Each dismissal became a brick in the foundation of my quiet empire, invisible to everyone but me. Yet tonight, standing in Maggie's opulent home, memories flooded back, vivid and bitter. I glanced around at the guests. the type of polished, successful people my parents worshipped, and knew I was still, somehow out of place. But this time, that invisibility was a weapon. Maggie, basking in compliments, saw me only as her shy, underachieving sibling. She had no idea the magnitude of the collision coming. The phone buzzed in my pocket again, pulling me sharply back into the present. Another urgent message flashed. The merger news leaks tomorrow. Everything's set. You ready? My heart pounded. It felt surreal, terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time, the family drama wasn't just emotional. It was strategic. Every painful dismissal had led me here, to this silent battlefield disguised as a family dinner. Maggie's laughter drifted toward me from across the room, carefree and oblivious. As I watched her smile widen, the bitterness inside me doubled, hardened into something powerful and unyielding. She had no idea what was about to happen. They'd ignored me my whole life, but they were about to pay attention now. I still remember the day I first walked into TechPulse's tiny, cramped office. It looked exactly how I felt back then. Small, forgotten, fighting to be noticed. The handful of employees eyed me suspiciously, openly skeptical that some quiet, soft-spoken woman could fix what looked like a sinking ship. And I couldn't blame them. On paper I wasn't impressive, but underneath I was a storm of determination, born from years of invisibility. I'd found TechPulse by pure chance. It was a small, struggling startup that once showed promise but had faded into near bankruptcy. Their technology was sound, brilliant even, but mismanaged, poorly marketed, overshadowed by bigger, flashier competitors. Something about their story hit home. They needed someone who understood being underestimated, someone who knew how to thrive under constant doubt. That first day, the skepticism was thick in the air, almost tangible. When I introduced myself, explaining my vision with quiet confidence, no one believed a word I said. But I kept talking anyway. I laid out ideas, strategies, and goals, specific, ambitious, quietly powerful. Slowly as I spoke, I felt something shift in the room. It wasn't respect yet, but it was attention. For someone who had lived most of her life ignored, that attention felt electrifying. Still, the path forward was brutal. Long nights became normal. Weekends vanished. My life shrank down to work, sleep, and relentless determination. I refused to fail, not this time. I'd poured my own savings into the company, gambling on myself in ways I'd never dared before. Friends worried, thinking I'd lost my mind. My parents barely noticed I was busier than usual. Maggie probably assumed I'd finally accepted mediocrity, but I saw something they couldn't, a chance to rewrite my story. After months of relentless struggle, we got our first big breakthrough. A major investor, known for his impossibly high standards, visited our tiny office to listen. My employees fumbled nervously through presentations, anxiety visible in their every movement. When it was my turn, something shifted inside me. For once, I didn't speak softly or carefully. I stood tall and told our story clearly, passionately, truthfully. The investor watched closely, unreadable at first, but when he smiled and shook my hand, announcing his commitment on the spot, the room exploded into shocked cheers. That moment was pivotal. It wasn't just the money or recognition, it was validation. I felt for the first time what it was like to be truly seen. From that day forward, TechPulse grew quickly, steadily. Our technology improved, teams expanded, and suddenly, we weren't just surviving, we were thriving. Yet through it all, I kept our success hidden, like a precious secret. I didn't update my LinkedIn profile, didn't brag on social media, didn't tell my family a single word. The reason was complicated, tangled in pride, fear, and resentment. But mostly, it was because I wanted to savor success quietly, away from their dismissive glances and empty congratulations. Until now. Today, standing quietly in the corner of Maggie's grand home, everything felt dangerously real. The merger that would bring TechPulse directly into competition with her beloved firm was finalized. Tomorrow, it would all go public. Maggie and my parents would finally see exactly what I'd accomplished. No fanfare, no shortcuts, just relentless determination. Part of me imagined the shock on their faces, the disbelief, the forced smiles when they realized their overlooked daughter had quietly risen above them all. Another part of me felt nervous, suddenly vulnerable, because the secret I'd carefully guarded was about to explode into the open. My phone buzzed again, the message simple yet profound. "Congratulations, Natalie. It's your time now." A shiver ran down my spine, excitement and fear mingling inside me. Tonight, Maggie smiled, confident in her superiority, never guessing her world was about to tilt dangerously off balance. Tomorrow, everything would change. My hidden strength would no longer be a secret. I had built something real, quietly, patiently, and now unstoppably. For the first time, my invisibility was about to become my greatest weapon. And my family, who'd never truly seen me, were about to get the shock of their lives. My phone buzzed again as I stared at Maggie's grand staircase, heart hammering against my ribs. A text lit up the screen, stark and simple. "You have to tell them tonight. News breaks in the morning. Good luck." My breath caught in my throat. I'd been dreading this dinner for weeks, and now that it was finally here, I felt frozen, trapped in a strange limbo between anxiety and excitement. I took a slow, shaky breath, steadying myself. The dining room ahead hummed with laughter and clinking glasses, the familiar, uncomfortable sounds of family gatherings I'd spent my life avoiding. I could already picture it. Maggie holding court, my parents beaming at her every word, friends and family basking in her charm. Meanwhile, I'd be wedged awkwardly at the table's edge, barely acknowledged, an afterthought at best. But tonight would be different. Tonight, their carefully curated reality would crack wide open. That thought terrified me more than I'd admitted, but it also filled me with a strange sense of urgency. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was the culmination of years spent proving my worth in silence. "Natalie," my mother's voice suddenly rang out from behind, startling me from my thoughts. She glided toward me, a forced smile stretched thin across her perfectly made-up face. Her eyes flickered over my outfit, instantly disapproving, before settling back on my face with practiced warmth. "We've been waiting for you?" "Maggie's got some exciting news to share tonight," she said, voice dripping with pride. My stomach twisted sharply, dread pooling hot and heavy. Of course Maggie had news. She always did. And whatever it was, it would overshadow everything again. "I'm sure she does," I replied quietly, barely masking my bitterness. Mom's smile wavered slightly, uncertain how to handle this rare hint of defiance. Inside the dining room, the atmosphere felt charged, almost electric. Maggie sat at the table's head, radiant and poised, commanding attention effortlessly. She turned her perfect smile toward me, eyes glittering with something sharp and unreadable. "Little sister finally joins us," she teased lightly, laughter echoing gently from the others at the table. "We thought you'd gotten lost." My cheeks burned, but I forced a calm smile, silently reminding myself that her arrogance would only make my eventual victory sweeter. "Just taking my time, Maggie," I responded evenly, feeling a flicker of satisfaction at the flash of surprise on her face. Dinner began predictably. Maggie's achievements recited like a litany, my parents' pride palpable with every accolade. I pushed food around my plate, throat too tight to swallow, barely able to breathe, as each passing minute brought me closer to the inevitable confrontation. And then Maggie tapped her glass, silencing the table. "Everyone, I've got something special to announce," she said brightly, basking in anticipation. "My firm has just landed a massive, game-changing client. Tomorrow morning, we're announcing a strategic merger that will cement us as the industry leaders." My heart dropped straight to my stomach. I stared at her, disbelieving, nausea roiling inside me. No, it couldn't be, not now, not this way. "Yes," Maggie continued proudly, lifting her glass. "We're officially merging with a promising little company called TechPulse, an acquisition we're very excited about." The room erupted in polite applause, my parents beaming. Everything blurred around me as the realization sank in. Maggie didn't know. She thought her firm had already won, absorbing my company as if it were just another small victory, another easy conquest. My voice felt raw when I finally spoke, cutting through the applause sharply. "No, Maggie, you're mistaken." Every head snapped toward me, confusion rippling through the room. Her perfect brow furrowed slightly, irritation flickering beneath her flawless mask. "Excuse me?" "TechPulse isn't merging with your firm," I said, finding courage in the truth I'd held secret for too long. "We turned down your offer this morning. We're your competitor now, not your acquisition." The silence was deafening. Maggie's eyes widened, shock replacing arrogance for the first time ever. My parents stared, frozen mid-smile, confusion etched painfully across their faces. I stood slowly, heart racing, pulse pounding louder than ever. "And there's something else you should know," I continued, voice steady despite trembling hands. I'm TechPulse's CEO, it's my company. Shock radiated around the table like a physical wave. Maggie paled visibly, her confident facade crumbling as she realized, finally, the truth. The little sister she'd dismissed her whole life had quietly surpassed her, irrevocably changing the game. And tonight, right now, I was finally done hiding. The stunned silence lingered, heavy and suffocating. It was almost worse than their usual dismissal, because for the first time they were truly looking at me. My parents stared, mouths slightly open, disbelief and confusion warring openly across their faces. Maggie, always so composed, looked suddenly exposed, flustered even. It was oddly satisfying, but satisfaction evaporated quickly when Maggie regained her composure, smoothing out her shock like a wrinkle on a perfect dress. Her smile returned, sharper, crueler. You, Natalie? Her laughter rang out coldly, slicing through the thick silence. CEO? That's cute, but really, just tell us, did you finally get an assistant position somewhere? My blood boiled at her dismissive tone, years of bitterness bubbling dangerously to the surface. Before I could respond, Mom quickly stepped in, her voice brittle and falsely cheerful. Natalie, sweetheart, perhaps you misunderstood something. Maggie's company is very successful. Your little startup? My little startup turned a multi-million-dollar profit last year. I interrupted sharply, surprising myself as much as everyone else at the table. My voice echoed slightly, firm and confident. I barely recognized it. And we're projected to triple our numbers this year. Maggie's company made an offer. We turned it down. The table went rigid again, all eyes shifting nervously between Maggie and me. Maggie's lips tightened dangerously, eyes narrowing with carefully controlled fury. You really think we'd make a serious offer to a company run by you? My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady, feeling stronger with each word. Not only did you make the offer, Maggie, you begged. Because we hold the technology your company desperately needs. The jab hit home. Maggie flinched visibly, and the slight gasp from Mom sent a shock of satisfaction racing through me. But Maggie recovered quickly, that smoothing her glossy hair, as she leaned forward with exaggerated patience. Fine, Natalie. Let's pretend for 1 second you aren't making this all up for attention. How exactly did someone like you, a girl afraid of her own shadow, manage to build something remotely competitive? Each word dripped contempt. Heat flushed my cheeks, humiliation fighting against fierce resolve. Around us, guests watched silently, uncomfortable, but riveted by the spectacle unfolding. I took a shaky breath, readying my defense, but Maggie wasn't finished. You see, she continued, voice loud enough for everyone to hear, Natalie has always lived in a fantasy world. She wants to matter desperately, but the truth is she's just ordinary, always has been, always will be. Mom's gaze dropped, shame creeping into her eyes. Dad shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. My heart sank sharply, a familiar ache resurfacing, sharper than before. Maggie leaned back triumphantly, expecting my retreat into silence. But tonight, silence wasn't an option. I stood up abruptly, hands trembling beneath the tablecloth. You know what, Maggie? You're right, I'm not like you. I never wanted to be. The words hung heavy, charged with years of unspoken resentment. Maggie's smug expression flickered briefly, doubt creeping into her eyes. It was all the encouragement I needed. I didn't build TechPulse to impress you, Mom, Dad, or anyone at this table. I did it because I believed in something bigger, something genuine, something none of you ever understood. Please, Natalie, Mom interjected quietly, embarrassment and frustration mingling in her tone. Don't cause a scene. I didn't cause this scene, I snapped back, voice quivering but firm. This family caused it, every time you ignored me, every time you acted like my dreams weren't good enough. Silence returned, thick with tension. I could feel eyes from every corner of the room burning into my back, but I refused to look away from Maggie's stunned face. She opened her mouth but nothing came out, no witty retort, no cruel jab. For once, Maggie was speechless. My heart pounded loudly in my ears. Part of me wanted to sit back down to apologize for making things uncomfortable, to retreat to familiar invisibility. But a stronger part, a part I'd hidden away for too long, wouldn't let me. I straightened my shoulders, voice steady as I addressed the entire room, reclaiming control. I spent years hoping you'd see my worth. Tonight I realize you never will. And you know what? That's finally okay, because your validation isn't something I need anymore. With that, I pushed my chair back decisively, the scrape of wood against marble echoing sharply. Enjoy your evening. As I turned away, every step felt like liberation. Maggie's shocked silence followed me out, the perfect echo of a lifetime finally reversed. My heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, each step away from that table freeing something buried deep inside me. But just before I reached the hallway, Maggie's voice sliced through the stunned silence like glass. You know what, Natalie? Enough! Her words were loud, vicious. I froze mid-step, suddenly aware of every eye fixed firmly on us both. Slowly I turned back, dread coiling tight in my stomach. She rose to her feet, elegance replaced by barely controlled rage. Her voice shook slightly, a hint of vulnerability she quickly masked. You always wanted attention, didn't you? Playing the victim, acting misunderstood. Well, here's the truth. You're not misunderstood, you're just embarrassing. A sharp gasp echoed somewhere behind me, but Maggie wasn't done. She stepped forward, eyes blazing. You think anyone really believes your pathetic story? You built a company, you turned down our offer? She laughed bitterly, coldly dismissive. It's ridiculous. You've always been desperate for validation. Maybe that's why no one ever gave it to you. Every harsh word sliced through me, reopening wounds I'd foolishly thought healed. Heat flooded my face, shame and fury battling inside me. My parents sat frozen, eyes wide, mouths tight, watching, saying nothing. The crowd murmured uncomfortably, but no one intervened. Enough, Maggie, I whispered, voice trembling despite my effort to remain composed. Enough? She laughed again, cruel and sharp, moving closer. This is just honesty, Natalie. You want to be seen? Fine. Everyone can see you clearly now. You're the pathetic younger sister who fabricates stories to hide her mediocrity. I wanted to shrink away, vanish into familiar silence. But something deep inside held me rooted. The humiliation was unbearable, rawer than anything I'd ever felt, but I forced myself to meet her eyes, refusing to surrender. Mom, Dad, Maggie announced loudly, her tone suddenly formal and cold. I think it's time we finally face reality. Natalie has always been a disappointment. Tonight just confirms what we've known all along. If she insists on embarrassing our family publicly, maybe she doesn't belong in it anymore. The words hit harder than anything she'd said before, echoing painfully around the room. I stared, stunned, feeling every shred of family loyalty I'd clung to disintegrating in front of my eyes. My mother looked away sharply, guilt flickering briefly before settling into quiet resignation. My father just stared blankly at his plate. Maggie turned slowly, addressing the crowd now, her voice theatrically apologetic. I'm sorry you had to witness this scene. Family drama should never ruin a pleasant evening, but sometimes it's necessary to clear the air. She glanced back at me, eyes glittering triumphantly. Natalie, you're officially no longer welcome here. You're disowned. Disowned. The word echoed around the room, hanging heavy and painful in the silence that followed. No one spoke. No one defended me. My chest felt tight, heart racing as shame battled anger. The humiliation wasn't private anymore. It was public, raw, merciless. I took a deep, shaking breath, tears pricking hotly behind my eyes, though I refused to let them fall. You know what, Maggie? My voice was quiet, edged with controlled fury. Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't belong here. But someday soon, when you realize just how badly you've underestimated me, I want you to remember this moment. She scoffed, dismissing me with a casual wave, arrogance thick in every gesture. Goodbye, Natalie. Turning away felt impossibly hard, humiliation clinging to me like a heavy cloak. But something powerful stirred beneath the pain. This was the breaking point, beyond humiliation, beyond family loyalty. They'd made their choice, loudly and clearly. Now it was time I made mine. I stepped firmly toward the door, holding my head higher with each step. Around me murmurs swirled, judgmental glances followed, but for the first time, none of it mattered. Maggie's cruelty had stripped away any lingering doubts, leaving only a fierce clarity. They'd officially cast me aside, but unknowingly set me free. Outside, the cool night air hit my skin, sharp and cleansing. Alone on Maggie's perfectly manicured lawn, I stared up at the stars, breathing deeply, steadying my trembling hands. Tonight's humiliation had been brutal, devastating even, but deep beneath the pain simmered something stronger. Resolve. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow the truth would explode publicly, exposing Maggie's arrogance and my quiet strength. Tonight she'd won the battle, but tomorrow I would win the war. The The sound of crickets chirped softly around me, a peaceful contrast to the emotional chaos I just left behind. Leaning against my car in Maggie's driveway, I tried to steady my breathing, tried to hold back tears of humiliation and rage, disowned, cast aside like I was nothing, and worse yet, in front of everyone. I had always known my family was capable of cruelty, but tonight surpassed everything. The hurt was deep and sharp, but beneath the humiliation, something else began to simmer. Pure, determined anger. I wiped a stray tear from my cheek, feeling fiercely ashamed that I'd even let them see me this vulnerable. My phone buzzed again. With a shaky hand, I glanced at the screen, expecting another update about tomorrow's announcement. Instead, I froze as a familiar name flashed: Jason Porter. He was one of the industry's most respected tech journalists, notoriously private and selective about who he spoke with. I'd sent him an exclusive about the merger rejection, hoping he'd cover our story, but I never dreamed he'd call personally. Heart pounding, I answered, forcing my voice steady. "Hello? Natalie? It's Jason Porter." His voice came through smooth and confident. "I wanted to talk before the story goes live tomorrow." "Okay," I said carefully, unsure what else to say, heart suddenly racing with anticipation. "I just finished verifying your claims and I've seen the paperwork," he continued, excitement clear in his voice. "Your company is incredibly impressive, and your rejection of your sister's firm is going to shake things up. It's the kind of story that changes careers. Are you prepared for this?" A thrill surged through me, quickly chasing away my humiliation. "Yes," I replied firmly. "I'm ready." "Good," he said warmly, a smile evident in his tone. "Because when this drops, you're not going to be invisible anymore. I hope you realize you're about to become the talk of the industry. Everyone's going to know your name." Those words washed over me, electrifying and validating. For the first time tonight, I felt truly seen. Jason's genuine enthusiasm and belief were exactly what I'd needed after Maggie's brutal humiliation. Suddenly the future didn't feel terrifying, it felt like justice, like vindication. "Thanks, Jason," I managed, voice thick with unexpected emotion. "This means a lot." "You earned it," he replied kindly. "Rest up, Natalie, tomorrow's going to be huge." As the call ended, I felt stronger, clearer, suddenly in control again. Jason Porter's validation had been like a balm, healing the raw wounds from Maggie's cruelty. I breathed deeply, filling my lungs with cool night air, embracing the powerful, shifting reality. Maggie's insult echoed again in my memory, but now it felt hollow and meaningless. Inside, I could still hear faint laughter and the murmur of conversation. For a brief moment, I imagined Maggie's confident, smug expression, utterly clueless about the storm about to hit her precious reputation. Tomorrow, everything she'd worked for, every facade she'd maintained, would crumble. And it would be my quiet strength, my relentless perseverance, that brought it crashing down. With newfound resolve, I climbed into my car, started the engine, and began driving home. Streetlights blurred softly past my window, illuminating my quiet reflection. Tonight had been painful, yes, but it had also set me free. Maggie had cast me aside publicly, but tomorrow the world would embrace me for exactly who I was, the capable, resilient leader she'd mocked. Pulling into my driveway, I parked and sat quietly in the darkness, savoring the calm before the storm. Tonight had felt like the end, but really, it was just the beginning. My phone buzzed again softly, another message from Jason. "Just confirmed front page coverage tomorrow. Congratulations, Natalie." A smile broke across my lips, genuine and unstoppable. The quiet girl they'd ignored, mocked, and underestimated would finally be front and center. I didn't need their validation anymore, but knowing they'd soon face the undeniable truth was deeply satisfying. Tomorrow, the world would learn my name. Maggie and my parents would be forced to acknowledge me, forced to see me clearly, finally. Tomorrow, everything would change. And tonight, despite everything, I felt strong. I felt powerful. I felt ready. The next morning, sunlight streamed softly through my kitchen window as I brewed coffee, my heart jittery with anticipation. The quiet hum of morning traffic seemed at odds with the explosion about to rock my world. I stared anxiously at my phone, refreshing Jason Porter's news site every few seconds, waiting for the article to appear. Finally, it happened. A bold headline flashed onto the screen, crisp and powerful. Tech Pulse rejects industry giant, rising CEO Natalie Carter stuns market. My breath caught sharply in my throat. There it was, my truth, spelled out clearly and undeniably. Quickly scanning the article, my pulse raced faster as I read phrases I'd only dreamed of. Innovative, visionary leadership, fearless rejection of traditional powerhouses. Jason hadn't just written a story, he'd created a revolution around my quiet success. Within minutes, notifications flooded my phone. Emails, texts, messages, all congratulatory, all shocked, all validating. Friends who'd watched my struggle sent proud messages, colleagues offered enthusiastic congratulations, and suddenly my inbox was filled with invitations from top industry conferences and media outlets. But one name was conspicuously absent from the influx: Maggie. It didn't matter. This moment wasn't about her reaction. It was about finally owning my strength. Yet, I couldn't help wondering what Maggie's perfect morning looked like now. Her arrogance replaced by shock, her polished confidence shattered by disbelief. As if summoned, my phone lit up again. Maggie's name flashed aggressively on the screen. My stomach tightened sharply, fingers hovering over the screen before answering. Her voice was cold, carefully controlled, hiding anger beneath a veneer of forced politeness. "Natalie, we need to talk." "No," I replied calmly, surprising even myself with how steady I felt. "We really don't." She inhaled sharply, frustration cracking through her calm facade. "This isn't a game. You've embarrassed our entire family." "I embarrassed you?" I interrupted, laughter bubbling unexpectedly from deep within. "After last night, Maggie, I don't owe you anything. Certainly not an apology." "You blindsided us," she snapped, her composure slipping fully. "This is a disaster. Clients are calling, asking why we were rejected by some unknown startup." "Not unknown anymore, Maggie," I responded, savoring the moment. "And you didn't mind blindsiding me at dinner last night. Funny how differently it feels when you're the one left exposed." Silence stretched thinly over the line, heavy and strained. Finally, her voice returned, softer now, tentative in a way I'd never heard from her. "Look, maybe things got out of hand last night. But we're still family, Natalie." "No," I said firmly, cutting off her attempt at reconciliation. "You made it very clear I'm not your family anymore, remember? They had insisted we celebrate not just the company's success, but my personal triumph too." I'd been hesitant, still raw from the emotional fallout, but as I looked around at their smiling faces, faces that believed in me before the headlines, I realized how essential this moment was. Here, surrounded by my real family, I felt something powerful and healing begin to unfold inside me. "You know," said Carla, our head developer, a quirky, brilliant woman with a habit of twirling her glasses when excited, "we always knew you were going places. You just needed to believe it yourself." Her words warmed me deeply, more meaningful than any praise my family could have offered. Around me, other team members nodded enthusiastically, raising their glasses in agreement. "You stood by us when no one else would," added Ethan, our youngest coder, whose boundless optimism had kept us going through tough early days. "You trusted us, now everyone finally sees what we saw from day one." I swallowed hard, emotion thickening my throat, gratitude washed through me, overwhelming and pure. "I couldn't have done it without you. Any of you." I finally managed, voice shaking slightly. "Your belief in me meant everything, especially when I didn't fully believe in myself." The room fell briefly silent, eyes gentle and understanding. Carla broke the quiet first, voice cheerful again. "Well, you better get used to believing, boss, because now everyone else believes too. You're officially unstoppable." We laughed together, the warmth of camaraderie chasing away lingering shadows of pain. Sitting there, I realized something powerful. These people had chosen to support me, not out of obligation or family duty, but because they genuinely believed in my vision. That choice made their support infinitely more meaningful than my family's conditional approval. Later that evening, as I cleared away pizza boxes, Carla lingered by the sink, quietly thoughtful. She nudged my shoulder gently, offering a comforting smile. "Family isn't always who you're born with, Natalie. Sometimes it's who chooses you." Her words echoed softly, resonating deep in my chest. It felt profound, comforting in its simplicity. I'd spent my entire life chasing acceptance from people who didn't truly value me, overlooking the authentic family who'd always stood patiently by my side. My biological family had rejected me, but here tonight I'd found something richer. Acceptance without conditions, love without strings. "Thank you, Carla," I whispered, sincerity raw in my voice. She squeezed my arm reassuringly. Always. After everyone left, the quiet solitude of my home wrapped gently around me. I wandered slowly through the house, reflecting on Carla's words. The contrast between tonight's warmth and the bitter tension of Maggie's dinner couldn't have been clearer. Tonight's celebration felt genuine, healing, and right in ways I'd never experienced with my parents or sister. Pausing by the window, gazing out into the quiet night, I let the reality settle deeply into my heart. Maggie and my parents had chosen appearances and pride, sacrificing authentic relationships for status. In contrast, TechPulse, my chosen family, had embraced me entirely, supporting my vision, my quirks, and even my flaws. Here, acceptance wasn't something to earn, it was given freely, without conditions. In that moment, I finally understood true family wasn't defined by blood, but by loyalty and kindness, by choice and compassion. My family had chosen to disown me, yet tonight had proven beyond doubt that their loss was infinitely greater than mine. Standing alone in the peaceful quiet, I felt lighter than ever before. Their rejection was painful, yes, but it had given me a precious clarity, a chance to redefine family, love, and loyalty on my terms. And tonight, for the first time, I realized I'd never been alone. My chosen family had been there all along, quietly waiting for me to recognize them. It had taken years and painful lessons to see clearly, but now that I had, my path forward felt brighter, freer, and infinitely more meaningful. I breathed deeply, feeling gratitude and peace wash over me. Maggie and my parents had made their choice, but so had I. I had chosen myself, chosen authenticity, chosen the people who genuinely believed in me. And tonight, that choice felt like true victory. In the weeks that followed, Maggie's attempts to reconcile turned desperate, bordering on relentless. Her messages flooded my phone, shifting from pleading to demanding to bitter accusations. My parents, too, reached out occasionally, awkwardly dancing around apologies they couldn't quite voice, hoping to smooth over the fractures without admitting fault. It was exhausting, but something profound had shifted in me since that night. The quiet girl who'd craved approval, who'd longed for acceptance, was finally done chasing after affection from people who'd never valued her. I wasn't interested in hollow apologies, carefully worded to avoid responsibility. My boundaries, once soft and easily broken, had hardened into something strong and unyielding. I ignored most messages, deleted voicemails unread, left emails unanswered. It wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. The more firmly I enforced my boundaries, the lighter I felt, each rejection of their toxic patterns bringing relief, rather than guilt. Slowly the hurt and betrayal faded, replaced by empowerment, confidence, and something like peace. Then came the day I'd secretly hoped for but never fully expected. Maggie arrived unannounced at my office, storming in without permission, visibly shaken. The confident woman I'd grown up envying looked disheveled, uncertainty etched deeply into her expression. "Natalie, please," she said desperately, barely glancing at the curious eyes peeking from cubicles. "I need you to hear me out." The old Natalie might have crumbled under her intensity, guilted into giving her another chance. But this new Natalie stood firm, composed, calm. "You don't get to just barge in here," I replied quietly, meeting her gaze evenly. "This isn't your world anymore. You lost that privilege." Maggie blinked, clearly unprepared for my resistance, then tried again, voice softer but still tinged with entitlement. "We're sisters. Please, No, Maggie," I cut her off firmly, surprising myself at how clear and confident my voice was. "You forfeited that when you publicly humiliated me. Family doesn't do that. Real family wouldn't have ever put me in that position." She recoiled, stung visibly by the truth. "I made a mistake. I know that now. Isn't there room for forgiveness?" "Forgiveness?" I echoed, voice shaking slightly now with long-buried anger. "I spent years forgiving you, Maggie, forgiving you every time you undermined my confidence, mocked my dreams, made me feel worthless, but forgiveness doesn't mean letting you back into my life to do it all over again." Her mouth opened, shock coloring her features, but I wasn't finished. "You taught me something valuable that night," I continued steadily. "You taught me that my value doesn't come from your approval. I don't need you, Mom or Dad, to feel worthy." That realization set me free. "Natalie," she began softly, eyes pleading, her voice finally breaking with genuine vulnerability. I shook my head gently, a strange calm settling inside me. "It's too late, Maggie. My boundaries are firm now. You chose to cut me out, and I choose to protect my She stood motionless, struggling visibly with the unfamiliar rejection. Behind her, my team watched discreetly, silently supportive, ready to step in if I needed. But I didn't need them. I had this on my own. Maggie's power over me was finally broken, replaced by my quiet but unshakable strength. Eventually, she turned and left without another word, shoulders slumped, confidence shattered. As the office door clicked softly shut behind her, I felt no triumph, only a deep, peaceful sense of resolution. This confrontation had been necessary, inevitable, but now that it had happened, I finally felt completely free. That evening, sitting alone at home, sipping tea quietly in my living room, I realized Maggie's desperate visit had been the final test. And I'd passed, stronger and clearer than ever. Setting those boundaries hadn't been easy, especially with family, but it was essential for my healing. Outside, the night was calm, stars gently illuminating a sky that felt clearer somehow, more peaceful. I reflected quietly, recognizing how much I'd grown, not out of revenge or bitterness, but through genuine self-respect and clarity. Maggie and my parents had taught me a painful lesson, but one that had ultimately given me strength. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't weak or easily manipulated. I was someone who knew her worth, who honored her boundaries fiercely and unapologetically. And tonight, in the quiet solitude of my home, I finally felt the truth deeply in my bones. I was not just surviving, I was thriving. I had turned my pain into strength, humiliation into self-respect, rejection into freedom. My boundaries were strong, clear, and uncompromising, and nothing, not even family, would ever threaten them again. In the months following Maggie's painful visit, my life settled into a rhythm of stability and quiet triumph. TechPulse grew steadily, capturing market share from bigger, older competitors. My reputation solidified as someone innovative, reliable, and refreshingly genuine, a stark contrast to Maggie's flashy yet superficial approach. But success alone wasn't enough for me. After everything I'd experienced, I understood deeply that simply accumulating wealth or power could never fully satisfy me. Instead, I felt compelled to use my newfound platform to create something truly meaningful, something that would outlast headlines and corporate victories. That's when I began investing heavily in programs that supported overlooked talent, people who, like me, had once felt invisible. Scholarships, mentorship initiatives, community tech incubators, all designed to uplift individuals who'd been underestimated their whole lives. The response was overwhelming, gratitude pouring in from young men and women finally seen and supported. Each story reminded me powerfully of myself, struggling, ignored, determined, and reinforced the rightness of my path. Success was no longer about proving myself to Maggie, my parents, or anyone else. Instead, it had become about empowering others to rewrite their own narratives, just as I had rewritten mine. One afternoon, as I walked through the halls of our buzzing incubator, watching teams of passionate innovators collaborating eagerly, a familiar voice called softly from behind me. "Miss Carter?" Turning, I saw a young woman nervously approaching, clutching a laptop. Her shy smile instantly resonated deeply, pulling me gently back to my younger self. "Yes?" I replied warmly. She hesitated, gathering courage. "I just wanted to thank you personally. The scholarship your foundation gave me changed my life. My family, they didn't really believe in this path for me. But you did." Her sincerity touched me profoundly, gratitude shining openly in her eyes. "What's your name?" I asked gently. "Kayla," she replied, voice stronger now, pride flickering briefly. "I'm launching my own startup soon, and it's because of you. Your story inspired me. I watched your interviews, read your blogs. You made me believe someone like me could do it." Emotions surged sharply, tears threatening briefly before I managed to smile warmly. "Kayla, someone like you absolutely can do it," I said softly, meaning every word deeply. "Never let anyone convince you otherwise." As Kayla walked away, smiling broadly, pride blossomed in my chest. Not from power or wealth, but from something richer and far more meaningful. My experiences, painful as they'd been, had created opportunities for others to thrive. Maggie's cruelty had sparked something transformative inside me, a legacy defined not by personal revenge, but by genuine compassion and empowerment. Weeks later, at an award ceremony honoring community leaders, I stood nervously on stage, looking out at an audience filled with people whose lives my initiatives had touched. Maggie and my parents were notably absent, but it hardly mattered now. My chosen family filled those seats, their pride and support more genuine than anything I'd ever experienced at home. Accepting the award, I spoke sincerely from my heart, voice steady and clear. I built Tech Pulse quietly, invisibly, because I believed in something others dismissed. But success isn't meaningful unless we use it to lift others. Tonight, I dedicate this honor to every person who's ever felt overlooked, underestimated, invisible. Your stories matter, your strength matters. And you are capable of changing the world. Applause erupted warmly around me, heartfelt and enthusiastic. Standing there, I felt something profound settle inside me, fulfillment deeper than I'd imagined possible. This was my legacy, defined not by rejection or revenge, but by the quiet power of kindness, resilience, and belief in others. After the ceremony, surrounded by hugs and genuine praise from people who'd walked paths similar to mine, I finally understood something vital. Success had never been about proving Maggie or my family wrong. It had always been about proving myself right. Later, alone at home, gazing out at the city lights twinkling gently below, gratitude overwhelmed me. My journey had begun in quiet pain, shaped by rejection and invisibility. Yet now it blossomed into something powerful, purposeful, and deeply meaningful. My life had become a testament to the strength hidden beneath silence, the dignity within resilience, and the profound potential within every overlooked person. That night, I knew my legacy had shifted irreversibly. It wasn't defined by family approval, public accolades, or corporate victories. It was defined by empowering others, lifting them as I'd once wished someone would lift me. And knowing this, feeling this truth deeply and fully, I finally felt whole. The morning sunlight gently filtered through my window, warm and golden, bathing the room in quiet calm. I sipped my coffee slowly, feeling a peaceful clarity that had become part of my daily rhythm. So much had changed over the past year. Painful revelations, dramatic confrontations, quiet triumphs, and yet the most profound shift was within me. The validation I'd sought from my family was no longer necessary. Their rejection, once crippling, now felt distant, softened by time, and overshadowed by genuine self-acceptance. I'd finally come to understand that true validation never comes from others. It comes from within, from believing in your own worth without condition. That realization had transformed everything. My phone buzzed softly on the table. It was a text from Carla, my trusted friend and colleague. A simple reminder, "Don't forget, today's interview at 3 p.m. Can't wait to see you shine." I smiled softly. Today, I've been invited to share my story on a prominent podcast known for inspirational success journeys. Years ago, the thought would have terrified me, speaking openly about my struggles, my family's rejection, my quiet path toward success. But now the fear was gone, replaced by a calm, clear purpose. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every person who'd ever felt invisible, every heart silently struggling for recognition. Sharing my truth openly felt important, an act of service, empowerment, and genuine connection. Later that afternoon, headphones securely on, microphone in place, I began to speak softly but confidently into the quiet space of my home studio. The host warmly welcomed me, inviting me gently to share my journey from overlooked sister to empowered CEO. As I recounted each step, painful family dinners, quiet late nights working tirelessly, the moment Maggie publicly disowned me, I felt strangely liberated. Each memory carried less bitterness now, softened by growth, resilience, and perspective. And if my story resonates with you, please let me know in the comments. Have you ever felt overlooked, underestimated, invisible? Share your experiences below. And if this message meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and please share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Because trust me, your truth is powerful, your voice matters, and your story deserves to be heard.